Rockford's number one hit music station, 97 COK. Steve Shannon Show with Mandy James at 7:31. Tim Johnson, Rockford native, a friend of ours that's living in Houston, has been for some time, has been through a few hurricanes. And that is the one thing that makes it really tough for most of us to understand. If we've never been through one, even some of the flooding we've had when the river levels have risen around here, it's been awful for those that live by the river or those that want to go boating on the river. But beyond that, really nobody else is affected.
Yeah, this is a lot different than a tornado or a blizzard.
Tim, just literally give us an idea of, from your perspective, just how bad have things gotten in Houston?
The scope and scale of this disaster is really unprecedented. It's much bigger than Katrina, Ike, and Sandy. In fact, according to the Weather Service, we had 16.7 inches of rain on Sunday alone, breaking the record for the most rainfall in a single day in Houston history. And since Friday, we've had more than 2 feet of rain, and it's just unbelievable how much damage is being placed. This morning, they were estimating 85% of Houston is underwater.
I mean, once the rain stops, that's weeks, months? How long for, at least for the water to go away, but then to dry up? I mean, how much time are they talking?
The streets in many of the public parks here are designed to flood. Houston sits just 35 feet above sea level. And most of the city is flat as a pool table. So the Streets and Park Service has a temporary retention pond accommodating slow, steady drainage through a bayou. So this is completely overwhelmed. I mean, it's going to be weeks before certain areas are no longer flooded. Just don't know how bad it's going to be. Just to put it in perspective for you, Rockford's my hometown. I was born and raised there. Rockford is the third largest city in Illinois and 171st most populated city in the U.S. with about 345,000 in the metro. Houston is the largest city in Texas and the 4th largest city in the U.S. with 2.3 million in the city and 6.1 million in the metro. That's 18 times larger. In fact, if Metro Houston was a state, it would be the 16th largest population in the United States behind Massachusetts and ahead of Tennessee.
And 85% of it is underwater.
Yeah, and you're talking about 25 headquarters of Fortune 500 companies all underwater today.
Logistically, when it comes to evacuating a city like Houston, how quickly does it need to be done before anything like this happens, and where do the people go?
That's a great question, and the answer is it can't be done. During the hours leading up to Hurricane Rita's landfall in September of 2005, tens of thousands of Houstonians attempted to evacuate, and the traffic jams lasted for days. Over 100 people died. So far, only 8 Houstonians have died, and unfortunately, that number is going to go up.
Yeah, I asked that because, when you're in the Midwest, one of the big questions people always ask here is, well, how come these people weren't evacuated? Well, a lot of these people were told not to evacuate for reasons like that. So we can't really wrap our brains around why people were still even in the area in the first place.
Well, Houston is 18 times larger than Rockford. If you think about that, 18 times larger, you just can't move 6.1 million people. It's just not going to happen. Rockford is about 65 square miles. Houston is 667 square miles. And the other thing is the storm reached all the way to San Antonio. Now, that's 197 miles away from Houston. So even if you got out on the road, you would have to drive at 50 miles an hour at least 4 hours to get out of it. And if traffic was backed up, you could spend 12, 15 hours on the side of the road. And many people ran out of gas during Hurricane Rita.
Hurricane Harvey is refueling back out in the Gulf and expected to make landfall again today. Things are going to get even more awful than they are now.
We're actually getting into the situation that affected New Orleans during Katrina. Our natural dams and waterways are completely saturated. They chose yesterday to start releasing water from our dams to protect them from collapsing. That is my biggest fear. We have 2 large reservoirs and dams in the northwest corner of Houston. We're on the west side. And if they let go, you're going to see just horrible flooding that's going to take a lot of lives because it'll be rapid and people won't be able to protect themselves from it. So, yes, we still got rain and we still got flooding and there's still a lot of people in trouble. But if those dams let go, it's going to be horrendous.
And if you think for a minute that perhaps most of what's affecting Texas would not affect us here, You mentioned earlier, Tim, about 25 heads of corporations there and lots of oil refineries, which means production's been stopped for gas, and that means gas prices within the next couple of days are going to start skyrocketing. Is that correct?
Steve, you're right. Rockford is going to feel this. Most of the oil in America is refined in the Houston area, and they produce everything from PVC pipes, dry cleaning fluid, and 27% of the nation's gasoline. I'd fill up today on your way into work. If you're listening, gas prices are going to skyrocket. And in addition to that, the Port of Houston is the busiest waterway in the nation. They provide nearly 65% of all petrochemical products to the nation, while moving a majority of imports and exports to the world. And it's been closed since Friday until further notice. Both airports are also closed. So there are no items coming in or out of Houston, and won't for days. The stock market will notice and take a hit in the coming weeks. I mean, I love New Orleans. It's one of my favorite cities, but it's not a major economic force. Houston is the energy capital of the world.
Tim, your family and friends are absolutely in our thoughts and prayers. You can make donations in $10 increments by texting the Red Cross at 90999.
Well, please support the American Red Cross. I've been a supporter for over 20 years. They show up. They take care of people. They spend the money the smart way. You can't ship anything in here. If you make donations, they're not going to be here for days or weeks. And please keep in mind the pets. There's a lot of pets that have escaped during all these horrible storms. There's an organization called Austin Pets Alive that is they're bringing all the dogs and pets that they're found that are running loose in Houston over to Austin to take care of them. In fact, they've already collected over 235 animals. So if I would simply ask your listeners to support them if they can, okay?